interesting conversation from Ajibola. We move to another very interesting conversation. This time around, we're staying with Lagos, the center of excellence, the state that all good things happen. And today on the program, we'll be taking a look at things around infrastructure and the growth of Lagos State. And joining the conversation this morning is a friend of the house, and of course he is the APC youth leader here in Lagos, Dr. Muritala Seriki. Thank you for being on the program.
Thank you very much.
This morning.
Thank
Right, we're looking at or we're evaluating the infrastructural development of Lagos, and of course perhaps this morning we'll be tilting this conversation towards young people and how, infrastructure really, what it means to young people and how Lagos State is also catering to the needs of young people. But very quickly, let's look at it broadly. When we say infrastructure, and we know that Lagos, in terms of size, is a very small place, but houses millions of people, and on a daily basis a lot of people still come into Lagos and they refuse to go back to where they are coming from or where they've come from. So when we talk about infrastructural development, what does this really mean to you in particular and to young people generally? Because again, sometimes it could be vague and some say infrastructure, but from the mind of a young person, infrastructure development, what does it really connote?
Thank you very much for inviting me today. And this is a very nice topic that we have to look at together, because I'm also aware that a whole lot of people have a misconception about what infrastructure is.
It really is.
People think that, when there is good road alone is what infrastructure is about. But I will tell you that's not it. And the reason is simple, that if you're going to base your judgment about infrastructure of any country, any state, or any local government, you want to see the amount of monumental development that we have in that state that young people is striving on. You also want to, you have said it right now, that Lagos is a place where everybody comes in and they don't want to go out. And then everybody comes in almost every day and not planning to go out until either death or something take them out of Lagos. But it's okay. And the only reason why that is happening is because of the amount of monumental developments that we have in Lagos. It's even very difficult. When I look at the topic, I was trying to see how best I can evaluate Lagos. And I don't think I want to compare it with any other states that we have in Nigeria.
Maybe other countries.
Maybe if I'm going to be doing comparison, and I want to talk about evaluation, my basis of evaluation, I can't find it very fit comparing with any other state in Lagos. And these are, of course, very prominent evidences as the economic nerve center of their country, and so it's difficult to evaluate it comparing it with other states. But quickly, when we are talking about infrastructural development, it's centered around the amount of opportunities that we have in that environment and how people have access to those opportunities. And those are the things people see, that they choose to leave their dear state, choose to leave their country, and prefer to stay in Lagos.
Okay, go ahead. Please land on that before I come in.
And then, so how does that affect the young people? Because Lagos is a land of opportunities, where irrespective of the kind of handiwork you have, irrespective of the kind of exposure, education you have, Lagos will find a way to accommodate you, to accommodate your skills, and give you a soft landing for survival.
All right, absolutely. So let's begin to look, just a few of the things that we consider as infrastructure and how this has also helped, the state, Lagos. Now, let's look at roads, because that's where you started from. So it would be right to just, key into that.
Yeah, it's okay.
Right.
So just last year alone, we realized that Lagos State government, commissioned about 61 roads and about 5 bridges and 11 carriages, across the city of Lagos. That's for state government. And we cannot count the total number of roads that the local governments, the LCDAs are doing in their community to make sure that, we have good accessible roads for citizens to thrive in. It does not mean to say that we still not have some roads with one or two potholes, that are yet to be done or that are bad. But of course, that the government cannot be everywhere at the same time.
Sure.
You know, the same way the local government chairman, the LCDA chairman are doing, the local government is doing, you know, and Mr. Governor, you know, Mr. Project is also doing that to make it sure that it's a better place for us. But if we want to compare the total number of tied roads and untied roads in Lagos, I'm happy to inform you and the public that, I mean, we have far more number of roads that are tied, that are good, that are motorable, compared to the ones that are untied.
Right. So as much as, yes, there are a lot tarred roads, there are a lot of motorable roads, and like you've also, you know, alluded to, there's still roads that, you know, are bad or are not motorable. But as much as we call on government, and government is expected to be everywhere, let's also quickly talk about maintenance culture when it comes to people who also use these roads. And so how important is it for people, especially young people now, to also be part of community and also ensure that they own this project? Oftentimes when Mr. Governor goes on you know, a project inspection or a commissioning or unveiling, he also tells the community members, this has become your own. You need to own this project. You need to ensure that you cater to them. When people around you are also misusing these roads, it behoves on you to caution them. And so let's talk about how people can also begin to own and take care of these projects like it was theirs, rather than expecting that it's the role of government to provide and to take care of these roads or these facilities.
So Mr. Babajide Olushola Sanwo-Olu always emphasizes during any of his commissioning of roads, he will say the work of the government is to construct this road for it to be motorable. But you all as the community, where that road has been done, you are to own the road, you are to maintain the road, you are to make sure that activities that promote growth and development of the state happens around these roads. Yeah, the maintenance culture, I don't really know, but I know that in some local government, they take it seriously, while maybe some will not take it seriously. Of course, there is also Lagos State
Public Works
Corporation,
right.
Thank you, would always, most of the time, go to those roads, maybe in cases of where there are little potholes, there are some damages to the road, you know, to get it fixed back and the patchwork to keep it running. You know, but of course, Lagosians, Nigerians need to improve more on our maintenance, not just on roads alone, but on all government properties and stuff that has to do with government and private, you know. So, yeah.
Let's talk about transportation. And I'm going to come from the angle of, I think only recently did a young lady somewhere around the Ikorodu make some videos that, you know, got attention, especially calling attention for the need for government to provide more BRT buses on that axis. And at the end of the day, that video got to the right authority, and the management of the BRT also said, Lamata said they were working on providing more BRT buses along those routes. So when we talk about transportation, we know that the Lagos State government, of course, is in charge of the BRT, in charge of the rails, also trying to provide more coaches and all of that. How well has government done when it comes to mobility, transportation, and has this also helped more young people to get to their various destinations?
Yeah, I'm impressed to inform you that in the whole of Africa, not just Nigeria, it is only in Lagos that we have a state government having a rail line project.
A state government.
A state government handling a rail line. Most of across the countries,
the federal
we realize that the federal government own a rail line. It's only in Lagos and maybe just few other states across the globe that we have a state government owning a rail line, managing a rail line, and operating a rail line.
Right.
You know, this is to also try to reduce the travel time for Lagosians from one place to another. We are also aware that already the state government is also trying recently to do a rail line that also moves Lagosians from Marina down to Lekki Free Trade Zone. Mr. Governor also promised that in this tenure is also going to kickstart the one that would also move from the third mill, that would also move from, that would extend from Mile 2 down to Okoko. You know, so this is part of those development that we are talking about in Lagos. Of course, we also know that in Lagos, we don't operate on we operate on almost all forms of means of transportation in the
Right,
state. You
right.
know, we also have the lag ferries, which are also
On the
doing well, communicate,
waterways. Yeah.
trying to commute passengers across the waterways in Lagos, that you can almost go anywhere from Lagos from one end to another. For instance, it takes you about 1 hour 30 minutes if you want to move by road from Ikorodu down to Aja.
Okay.
But if you want to go by waterways, it takes you just 15 minutes for you to move from Ikorodu down to Aja. It just crosses you to the other hand. So
But not everybody, everybody is, wants to go on the waterways.
so, but not everybody want to go on the waterways.
Right.
But I assure you that, I mean,
Safety.
it's the
It's
safety is,
and then
is
it's
there
fast.
and it's faster, it's safer. People don't really know. But how to compare all of these things is to compare the amount of accidents that we have had in waterways and the amount of accidents we have had on the road. So if you compare the number of accidents that we have had on the waterways and that we are having on the road, which is inevitable, either ways, you will realize that even waterways seems safer than, you know, going on road if you have the opportunity to say, oh, depending on which of the routes you want to go on. And of course, Lagos State government, like I've said, operating the BRT lane, and then not just only from one end to another. I also realize that Mr. Governor is also doing end-to-end, the last end means of transportation, where we now have all of those small buses that moves you from
last mile buses.
The last mile buses that move you from your destination then to your final destination. So, you know, are there still needs for improvement where we now know that, oh, some places we don't have this amount of monumental development within us to say, oh, a BRT takes me to a particular bus stop, there's no any other means of transportation down to, there is need, but what we have, like I said, it can't be evaluated with any other states we have in Nigeria.
All right, let's look at traffic congestion remains key. And I also know that in the lifetime of this administration, Mr. Governor and his team have also tried to ensure that the numbers of hours spent on the roads are reduced. A couple of roundabouts have been collapsed. A couple of road channels have been done. A couple of lay-bys have also been worked on. But when we look at traffic congestion and, of course, the fact that in Lagos you can't predict, anything can happen at any particular point in time. In your own opinion, where do you think that government needs to improve when it comes to traffic congestion? We know that we also have last mile, you know, men daily on our roads, sometimes even without observing public holidays, always there to ensure that, you know, the roads are free. But again, where are some of the ways that you think that we need to improve our efforts at ensuring that, yes, we might not be able to totally eradicate traffic congestion, but we can bring them to reduce them minimally?
Thank you. For me, if you ask me and across anywhere in the world, you will know that traffic congestion means development. It means that something is happening towards that area. That's why a lot of people are going there. You know, there is no state or no country you want to think about right now in the world that you would
So it means growth.
Yes, so
economic
first it
growth.
means growth.
Okay.
Yes. Do we want to now talk about reducing the traffic time, reducing the travel time from one point to another? It becomes a very important conversation.
Right.
First, my advice to the public is that let's try as much as possible to respect the traffic rules and traffic regulation. Sometimes, yes, it's inevitable. If we all know that if we close from this our TV station, 95% of our staff are living in Ikeja. So we already know that by the closing time of 4 p.m., there will be a traffic around people going to Ikeja.
So
all of us will want to get out of this gate by that 4 p.m. at the same time.
Right.
That's traffic. It also means that something is happening here and we're about to leave to go to another place. So, however, if we all listen, if we all try to obey the traffic rules and regulation, it's going to be a better place for us. Like I've said, the state government is doing so well in trying to reduce the traffic time. That's why you see what used to happen just at this your corridor in this Highland roundabout before now, when there was a big roundabout there. And the government decided that this roundabout, it can work in any other state, but for Lagos,
he has to go.
He has to go off, you know. So I think, yes, for us as citizens, part of our encouragement is to tell Lagosians, you know, that we must try as much as possible to respect traffic rules and regulation. Maybe that would also reduce the traffic time and travel time.
Right. So how well is government faring in terms of education? And I'm going to lump education to technology, I know that yes, they love tech hubs. Also, not many of them are government owned. They love private tech hubs. The government is supporting. So, how well is government doing when it comes to education advancement, provision of education, provision of learning environment, as well as engaging and encouraging young people to be tech savvy?
So thank you very much. Again, on education, it's only in Lagos that we have the highest number of state-owned universities in Nigeria. You know, it's only in Lagos that we have University of Science and Technology, we have University of Education, already ongoing pipeline,
Yeah,
University of Medicine. You know, I mean, if that happens now, it will only be in Lagos that will have a full-blown University of Medicine. If that happens,
State-owned.
State-owned, you know, University of Medicine. You know, so we have, you know, we have colleges of educations. You know, Lagos State also, with the help of Mr. President, Mr. Governor, had increased, you know, the total number of universities and tertiary education in Nigeria. I mean, while Mr. Tokunbo Wahab was the Commissioner for Education, you know, he upgraded all of those colleges of education to university, and they are thriving well now with NUC accreditation. You know, a round of applause to Lagos State government for putting all of these efforts together for
I
young
guess
people.
as you're speaking, your head is swelling.
Yeah, I mean, I'm impressed with what Mr. Babajide Olusola Sanwo-Olu is doing for development of Lagosians, you know. So, but let's leave that aside. While that is also very important to note, I mean, we can also still leave that aside to now talk about the amount of other monumental developments that we have in terms of informal education. Mr. Governor realized that maybe majority of people, not all Lagosians or not all Nigerians, would want to go to formal schools. Yeah. And so there are a whole lot of other informal schools that are present in Lagos. You know, again, Lagos is also rated one of the best, first third city hubs that we have, tech hubs that we have in Nigeria now, right now. So, and I can tell you for free that we have a whole lot of young people who are into tech, who are also benefiting from one programs or the other that the Lagos State government is doing to develop young people and in the space of tech. I'm aware that the Ministry of Science and Technology is putting up an innovation lab where young people can go learn different tech ops and can be in Nigeria and be working in Dubai, can be in Nigeria and be working in the US and earning in dollars. I'm also aware that Senator Adetokunbo Abiru is hosting a Sale Innovation Lab. In that Sale Innovation Lab is all for free for students who are interested in tech ops. And the last time that they did graduation, they had graduated about over 350 students in that school. And out of those 350 students, I'm also happy and my head is swelling that about 320 of them have been employed. Out of those 320 that have been employed, around 60, if my memory is not failing me, are already working abroad, earning in dollars in Nigeria. You know, so these are amount of monumental development you can think that a state can provide to young people. And this Sale Innovation Lab that we are talking about is all for free. It's for Lagosians who are interested into developing themselves in tech world. You don't necessarily have to have gone to a university before you need to know how to do all of these coding, and then you can earn in dollars.
Right, because again, and we also have technical colleges here in Lagos where students are also benefiting a lot when it comes to that. I'd like for you to also talk about, since we're talking about education and equipping young people, what are the opportunities that young people also are open to, vis-a-vis the fact that I know that there is the Lateef Jakonde Leadership Academy, where young people also benefit a great deal when it comes to training, governance, and all of that, as well as how the Ministry of Youth and Development is also helping discover leadership abilities in young people through the youth parliaments, through the Nigerian Youth Council. So tell us more how the Lagos State government, through all of this innovations, are also helping young people, open the eyes of young people to understand that they also have a role to play, not only in infrastructure development, but also in leadership building in Lagos?
Thank you very much, and I'm happy to say that I'm a product of the Ministry of Youth and Social Development in Lagos for identifying me, and special thanks to the governor, special thanks to the ministry for identifying me as a young leader about 12 years ago. While I was a medical student in school, I was a member of Lagos State Youth Parliament at that time, and at that time I also happened to be the speaker of Lagos State Youth Parliament. So why am I giving you this background? I'm giving you this background that not just only on infrastructural development. Lagos State government has series of other programs that are put together for young people to identify themselves in terms of leadership, in terms of tech, and what have you. You know, so in Lagos State Ministry of Youth and Social Development, we have a program called Lagos State Youth Parliament. We have a program called Ibile Youth Academy. We have a program, we have also national NYCN, the National Youth Council of Nigeria. We also have the Latif Jakonde Leadership Academy. And series of a whole, Elenio Cares also organizes a youth leadership platform. You know, different youth platforms where young people can thrive in learning about leadership, in learning about development of our dear state. So I'm a product of that, and I mean, I can say this for free here.
Yeah. So talking, you know, I had to ask that question because, again, when you look at infrastructural development, there's no how you can develop you know, just infrastructure and not build capacity of the people who will end up using the infrastructure anyway. And so if young people are not given the opportunity, then who else is going to sell and market the Lagos State government like you are marketing what the Lagos State government is doing here today? Let's quickly talk about the environment. And we also know that climate change is a big deal. Part of what the Lagos State government is also doing is to ensure that young people are engaged when it comes to climate change issues. There are clubs, and they also incorporate them into knowing what exactly is going on within their environment. Now the government is, you know, bringing back environmental sanitation, though there will be no restriction of movement. In your own opinion, how does this help in ensuring that we maintain a clean and hygienic city?
For me, I think that's a very good idea. As a matter of fact, you would understand that while the government understands its people, was why at the first instance there was a restriction of movement, because they understand that Lagosians are always on the
They are always on the move.
They are always on the go. And because the government also understands that your environment has to be clean for you to thrive. Your environment has to be clean for you to be able to do other businesses and see developments that you are seeing in Lagos. So it's why there was that imposition of restriction of movement, so that would compel, you know, Lagosians in doing that. But for some reasons, best known, you know, that restriction has been lifted. But it's good that the sanitation is back, the implementation is back, where we all have a dedicated time where that will be done. And then part of the campaign and the counseling will continue that Lagosians, Nigerians should try as much as possible to have a cleaner and safer environment. We have different clubs where we have for the climate change, where we encourage young people to also embrace these activities that has to do with climate change. But, you know, it's not enough. We'll continue to put on it such that Lagos will continue to be a mega city that it is already.
Right. Okay. Absolutely. So, of course, when we talk about
You're not talking about health.
Okay. No, most definitely. Health is big, and of course, health is huge. I was going to still stay with the environment before moving to health. Again, how do you think government can also sustain you know, health information, especially at the grassroots? Because we also know that health is wealth, and if the surroundings are clean, a lot of hospital visits might actually be reduced because of how people also keep their surroundings clean. So must we actually wait for the last Saturday of the month for environmental sanitation before, at the local level or at the home level, we keep our surroundings clean?
Yeah, that's why we say that the counseling continues. Because we, like I've said earlier, we understand that Lagosians, we are always on the go. We are interested in doing so many things, doing different things at the same time to achieve our target, to achieve our goals. Lagos government understand that about Lagosians. That was why the restriction was in the first place.
Right.
However, part of the ideology now remains that the counseling, the public campaign, the education, trying to tell the people, to educate the public about this would continue.
Right.
And so it wouldn't have to or shouldn't be a last Saturday
of the
month
thing,
alone thing. But once that is instilled in us, then the campaign should continue. You're also aware that in the market, in all our marketplaces, there is a compulsory Thursday.
Right.
It does not now mean that every Thursday is the only time Thursday to clean the market. But it's to instill the principle, is to instill the habit, in the cleaning habit. In the cleaning habit.
Let's quickly move to health. You also raised that we know that government is doing a whole lot when it comes to health. So I'll link the health, of course, with the insurance, also the health insurance, where people are also being encouraged to sign on to Ilireko. So how much is Lagos doing in that regard?
Also, so thank you very much. While I was working in Lagos State University Teaching Hospital, we realized that as a doctor, the patients you see alone in the hospital are not just residents of Lagos.
We
realize people come from Ogun, from Ibadan, from Osun, from Ekiti, down to access healthcare facilities that we have in Lagos. And this is evidence because of the total number of professors, consultants that we have here in Lagos, and the amount of quality health services they are going to get when they come to Lagos. Right. The government deemed it fit to say that they want to continue to put in the life of Lagosians in safer hands. So they decided to develop a Lagos insurance health scheme. That's what we tag Ilera-Eko. In the Yoruba word, just to mean Ilera, staying healthy of Lagos, basically. And the idea was to understand that we realize that some people who are Lagosians might not have the financial muscle and financial capacity to pay for some of their health bills. Then they developed the Ilera-Eko health scheme. The idea around it is to pay a token to avoid paying out of pocket, for healthcare facilities in Lagos. So they decided to, go an extra mile in implementing the Ilera-Eko, where you now know that with a family of 5, I think about 40,000 at my last check a year, you can have a safe delivery for your wife. Your children are sick, they can go to the hospital. You are sick as your husband too, you can also go to the hospital, So just to make sure that, life becomes easier for Lagosians, where apart from talking about the Ilera-Eko, we also understand, that it's almost very compulsory now for any institutions that we have in Lagos that they must have health insurance, whether or not Ilera-Eko or what have you. They must sign on. They must sign on one of the health insurance scheme, to be able to provide a healthy society for Lagosians. These are part of the infrastructural development that we're talking about and that of Lagos.
All right, Dr. Seriki, before we allow you go this morning, you've sat here for almost 35 minutes speaking glowingly about what Lagos is doing and how Lagos is progressing with its infrastructural development program. But for you personally, is there any infrastructural gap that you see that you'd like for government to address immediately?
Yeah. If we say there is no gap, we might not be saying what is exact.
Right.
We know that there are still some need for improvement. There is a critical need for improvement in terms of housing, because we know that there's a huge deficit about housing scheme. We're also aware that some people who work in Lagos don't live in Lagos. We are aware.
Because there's nowhere for them to live in Lagos. They live in the border town. Yes, we have people who live in Muwe. And they work in Lagos.
Because this is only Lagos, where other states you say welcome to Lagos. Welcome to their state. And here in Lagos, this is Lagos. Just as you're stepping into the border, just welcome.
Right.
This is Lagos. So there's a huge deficit on housing. And I also think that the government itself is trying its possible best, available, because it's the smallest states in terms of land mass, in size in Nigeria. And if you compare it to other states that have higher number of people, Lagos is far, far, very small, like a Mekoko zone, you know. In those, comparing Kano, Kaduna, Sokoto, and what have you. Lagos is like maybe 25% of their state.
So housing for you is one area the government needs to address.
To continue to address. Government is addressing it by the amount of housing estates that they are developing.
But they must continue.
They must continue to address
and they must
develop
ensure that
more.
it's quite affordable for everybody. Okay. But I have to leave this conversation here this morning. Thank you so much, Dr. Muritala Seriki, Youth Leader, APC Lagos State, for finding time to be with us on the program today.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate your thoughts.
Thank you so much.
Of course, we've been speaking with our guests this morning, and together we have evaluated the infrastructural development here in Lagos and where government also needs to speed up action. And government is doing a whole lot, but of course government cannot rest on its oars, because that is part of the responsibility government signed with the people. We'll take a quick break. The conversation returns shortly.